The galaxy was vast, filled with endless stars. Yet for him, the universe had never felt so small. He lived on a broken world, one that had once been proud and shining with glory. Now it was only a shadow of its past. The cities were ruins, the towers crumbled, and the sky above was always dim with smoke and dust. For as long as he could remember, life had been nothing more than survival. Every morning began the same. He woke up to the sound of silence, not the calm silence of peace, but the heavy silence of emptiness. The wind carried no songs, only dust across shattered streets. His people moved like ghosts, faces hollow, eyes lifeless. They worked only to survive another day. There was no laughter, no hope, and no future. They had forgotten how to dream. He often stood outside, staring at the night sky. The stars glittered above, beautiful yet cold. Once, his ancestors had told stories about those stars. They spoke of empires that ruled the skies, of ships that crossed the black void like birds in flight. They spoke of courage, unity, and hope. But those stories were old now, nothing more than whispers carried from one generation to the next. To him, the stars were not symbols of hope. They were reminders of everything that had been lost. Sometimes he wondered why he was still alive. What was the point of breathing if every day felt the same? Food was scarce, water was bitter, and safety was an illusion. Raiders sometimes came from the sky, stealing what little remained. Each time they attacked, more lives were taken. Each time, the people grew quieter, more broken. He remembered his mother once telling him, "Do not lose the fire inside." But her fire had died long ago. He could still see the empty look in her eyes on the day she left him, walking into the wastelands, never to return. Perhaps she had gone searching for something better, or perhaps she had given up completely. He never knew. Loneliness wrapped around him like a second skin. He did not trust anyone, not even those of his own kind. Trust had become dangerous. If you trusted someone, you risked betrayal. If you hoped for something, you risked heartbreak. So he built walls inside himself. He lived with coldness, because it was safer than believing. Yet deep inside, a part of him still wished. He wished for a reason to fight, a reason to rise, a reason to believe that life was more than endless suffering. But the galaxy was cruel, and he had stopped expecting miracles. That night was colder than most. He sat on a ruined wall, hugging his arms against his chest, his eyes fixed on the sky. The stars seemed brighter, though they did nothing to warm him. He whispered to himself, not really expecting an answer. Why are we still here? Why do we keep living when there's nothing left? And then, he saw it. At first, he thought it was another raider ship. A flicker of light cutting across the black sky, descending faster and faster. His heart tightened in fear. But this ship was different. It was smaller, worn, and not marked with the cruel symbols of raiders. The light grew brighter, piercing through the smoke like a blade of hope. He stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The ship roared as it descended, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Dust rose into the air, but through it, he could see the shape of something landing just beyond the ruins. The people around him peeked from their shelters, whispering in fear. Some hid, expecting death. Others simply stared, too tired to care if this was the end. But he felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt in years. His heart beat faster, louder, like a drum waking from long silence. He did not understand why. When the ship's ramp lowered, and a figure stepped out, he finally knew. It was not a raider. It was not a monster. It was a human, a lone human, walking, with steady steps, eyes bright against the darkness. And in that instant, though he did not yet know why, the boy felt the smallest spark of warmth flicker back to life inside his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something more powerful than fear. He felt hope. The human's steps were deliberate, calm, and strange in a place where everyone moved like shadows, fearful of the world around them. He wore a suit that seemed patched and old, but there was a sense of strength in every movement he made. The boy now, more aware of the pulse of something unfamiliar, watched in awe. He wanted to run. Every instinct told him to hide, to disappear into the ruins that had been his home for years. But something about the human's presence held him in place. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, the tiniest spark of hope he had not allowed himself to feel in years. The human stopped a few meters away, scanning the area with careful eyes. His gaze swept over broken walls, over hollowed faces, over the dust that had buried lives long forgotten. And then he looked directly at the boy. His eyes were sharp, clear, alive, and in them, the boy saw something he had not seen in anyone else for a long time: recognition and understanding. "I heard your distress call," the human said. His voice was rough, but warm. "I'm here to help." Help. The word felt strange, foreign, almost dangerous. No one had ever come to help them. The boy's mind raced, full of doubt. Why would anyone care? Why would anyone risk themselves for people who were forgotten, broken, and alone? But as he looked at the human standing there, small, worn, and yet unafraid, he felt something shift inside him. The people of the ruins whispered behind him, afraid and suspicious. "Who is he?" one asked. "Is this another trick?" another muttered. Fear had been their companion for so long, it was hard to imagine kindness. The human crouched slightly, not in weakness, but in a way that invited trust. "I am Daniel," he said, as if that name alone carried a promise. "I don't know why you are alone, or what has happened here, but I know one thing: I will not leave you." The boy blinked. Could someone truly mean that? Could someone truly risk everything for strangers? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. Yet, a small warmth lingered, curling in his chest, like the first flicker of sunlight after a long, endless night. Daniel did not wait for permission. He began moving among the people, offering water, food from his small stores, and tools that could repair broken generators and machines. Every gesture was simple, but every gesture carried a weight the boy had forgotten: care. "Why are you doing this?" the boy asked later, when he finally found the courage to speak. His voice trembled, though not with fear, it trembled with disbelief. Daniel smiled, faint but steady. "Because that's what we do, humans. We don't leave others to die in the dark, even if they are not our own, even if no one else would." The boy felt something inside him twist. These words should have been impossible, unbelievable. But the way Daniel moved, the way he worked tirelessly through the night, proved them true. He gave food even when he barely had enough for himself. He fixed machines that had been useless for decades. He did not complain. He did not ask for thanks. Something that had been dead inside the boy, the longing to trust, the desire to believe in something greater, began to stir. For the first time in years, he felt that life could be more than just survival. He watched Daniel laugh quietly while repairing a generator. The sound was so strange, so alien, in a place where no one ever laughed anymore, that it made the boy's chest ache. He remembered his mother's stories of joy, of warmth, of life before the ruins, and he realized that he had not remembered what those moments felt like in a long, long time. At night the boy found himself following Daniel, helping when he could, watching when he could not. He noticed little things, how the human's hands moved with confidence, how he spoke to the people not as slaves, not as weak beings, but as equals. And slowly, the boy began to feel something he thought he would never feel again: hope. The ruins no longer seemed completely lifeless. The broken walls no longer seemed like tombstones of the past. For the first time, the boy dared to imagine a future that could be built not from fear, but from trust, courage, and the strange, powerful determination of one human who had come to a world that had forgotten what hope felt like, and, though he did not know it yet, the boy's life and the life of everyone in those ruins was about to change forever. Days passed in the ruins, but for the first time in many years, the boy noticed a shift. The people around him, hollow, tired, and fearful, began moving with purpose. It was subtle at first, a hand reaching out to help a neighbor, a machine slowly coming to life, a garden patch receiving water again. Nothing large, nothing heroic, but it was enough. All of this change traced back to Daniel. The human was relentless. He never rested fully, never complained. Even when the sun, or what passed for a sun in that dim world, beat down harshly on the ruins, Daniel continued to work. He lifted heavy pieces of metal, tightened loose machinery, and carried water to those too weak to stand. Every act, no matter how small, carried a quiet strength that no one had seen in decades. The boy watched him one afternoon, as Daniel crouched beside a dying generator. Sparks flew in the dim light, and smoke curled into the sky. Daniel's hands were blackened with grease, but his face was calm. "This old thing still has life," he said softly. "We just need to believe in it." The boy had never heard words like that spoken to anyone in his life. Belief, hope, trust. They felt dangerous to imagine, yet something in Daniel's voice made them feel possible. Later, when the boy finally dared to approach him, Daniel looked up. His eyes were tired, but still bright. "Do you want to know why I do this?" Daniel asked, his voice steady. The boy nodded. Daniel shrugged. "Because humans don't give up. We keep fighting, even when everything seems lost. Even when we are afraid. We don't just survive, we try to make things better, for everyone, even strangers." The boy blinked, trying to understand. Humans, they were strange creatures, not like his own kind. Small, fragile, in some ways. Yet here was one, standing among ruins, showing courage beyond anything he had ever seen. And slowly, the boy began to realize that courage was contagious. It did not take long for the other people in the ruins to notice. They began to move differently, slowly at first, unsure. But then, under Daniel's steady example, their actions grew bolder. A broken water pump was lifted and repaired. Old tools were brought out and cleaned. Families shared food again, even when it was barely enough. One evening, the boy found himself sitting beside Daniel on a crumbling wall, watching the weak stars in the sky. "Do you really think we can survive this world?" he asked, his voice low. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He stared at the stars too, as if searching for the right words. "I don't know," he admitted finally, "but I know we can try, and trying is the first step toward hope. Without it, nothing else matters." The boy felt something stir inside him, deeper than anything before. A fire, long buried, began to glow. He realized he had not felt this alive in years, not since the ruins had become his entire world. Daniel had reminded him of something vital, that life could be more than endless struggle, that courage could exist even in the smallest acts, and that hope was not a gift, but a choice. And so, inspired by the human, the boy began to act. He helped Daniel wherever he could, carrying supplies, clearing debris, even encouraging others to move, to rebuild, to believe. It was not easy. Fear still lurked in every corner, every shadow. Doubt whispered in every mind. But the fire was growing, steadily, and no shadow could fully erase it. Daniel noticed the boy's change and smiled faintly. "You're learning," he said, "and that matters more than you know. One person's courage can spark another's, and soon it spreads." For the first time in years, the boy looked around and saw not just ruins, but possibility. He saw strength where there had been weakness, light where there had been darkness, and life where there had been despair. That night, when the boy returned to his small shelter, he did not feel empty. He did not feel cold. He felt something he had long forgotten, the warmth of belief, the fire of hope, and the knowledge that maybe, just maybe, the darkest times could be survived. Not alone, but together. And it was all because of a human who walked into their lives when no one else would. For days, the small spark of hope that Daniel had ignited among the people grew quietly, steadily. The boy had never seen his world look like this before, slightly brighter, alive with effort, and filled with cautious whispers of possibility. But peace, even fragile, rarely lasts in a universe so cruel. One evening, as the ruins were bathed in the dim glow of distant stars, a deep vibration shook the ground. The people froze. Dust rose from broken walls, and the air felt heavy with tension. The boy's heart thudded in his chest, a rhythm of fear long forgotten in the brief light of hope. "They're coming," whispered an elder, trembling. "The raiders. They have found us." Panic spread quickly. Children cried. Adults moved frantically, hiding tools, locking doors, and pulling loved ones close. For decades, these people had known only one response to danger: hide and wait for death to pass. They had no weapons left. They had no strength left. And now, in the twilight of their fragile hope, they faced the monsters who had hunted them for years. The boy looked at Daniel, expecting the same fear, the same hopelessness that had once lived in him. But Daniel's eyes were steady, calm, resolute. He scanned the approaching ships, calculating, moving with a quiet confidence that seemed impossible. "We cannot hide," Daniel said firmly. "We must stand. We may not have many, but we have courage. And courage can do what fear cannot." The boy's chest tightened. Could courage really stand against a fleet of raiders? Their ships were massive, their weapons deadly. Every instinct screamed to run, to vanish into the ruins, and pray. But he watched the human take a deep breath, step forward, and prepare to face what seemed unstoppable. "Stay strong," Daniel said, looking directly at the boy. "Protect your people. I'll buy you time." The word shocked him. "You'll fight them alone," he whispered, fear and disbelief choking his voice. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but that's what needs to happen. Don't wait for me. Rise. Now is your time." The boy's heart raced, pounding against his ribs like it wanted to escape. He had seen fear. He had lived with despair. But courage, real courage, was something new. It was frightening. It was overwhelming. And it was contagious. The first raider ships appeared over the horizon, blotting out the dim stars with shadows of doom. Their engines roared like beasts. Their weapons glimmered with deadly promise. The people of the ruins huddled together, trembling, whispering their last prayers to gods long forgotten. Daniel moved toward the human ship, his small vessel lifting from the ground with a roar. It was fragile, patched, and far outnumbered, but it was alive, and so was its pilot. The boy could hardly breathe as Daniel's ship charged into the raiders. Explosions shook the ruins. Bright lights flashed across the dark sky. Dust and smoke curled into the air, making it difficult to see. Yet even through the chaos, Daniel's ship moved with grace and precision. He struck where it hurt the most, weaving between larger ships, avoiding fire with skill that seemed impossible. The boy's fear warred with awe. Every second Daniel survived was another second for the people to hide, to prepare, to survive. And though he knew this battle could cost the human his life, he also knew something more important was happening. The people were watching. They were learning. They were seeing that courage could exist even against impossible odds. As Daniel's ship dived and darted through the raider fleet, he spoke over the comms, his voice strained but steady. "If I don't make it, remember this. You're not alone. Not anymore." The words struck the boy like a hammer. Not alone. For the first time, the phrase felt real, not like a story or a dream. Someone believed in them, risked everything for them, and had faith that they could rise. And the boy realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He could no longer remain frozen in fear. The human had given him the gift of choice, the choice to act, to fight, to become something more than a frightened survivor. The storm had arrived, but with it came the chance for fire. The night sky was alive with fire and noise. Explosions ripped through the air, shaking the ground beneath the ruins. Bright flashes illuminated the broken streets, casting long shadows over frightened faces. The boy watched from behind a wall, heart hammering in his chest, unable to tear his eyes away from the small human ship weaving between raider vessels. Daniel moved like a storm-given form, his ship darting and spinning with impossible speed. Every strike he made sent a raider ship tumbling into space, exploding in showers of sparks. But the boy could see the cost. The ship shuddered from each hit, smoke trailing from its engines, warning lights flashing. Every second that Daniel stayed alive was a gamble. Every second brought hope to the people below, and yet, every second could be his last. The boy's hand shook as he turned to the others. We have to help," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Fear still gripped them, but now it was mixed with something new, a spark that Daniel had lit in all their hearts. Courage. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the people emerged from their hiding places. They gathered whatever weapons they had, rusted rifles, broken spears, even old tools that could be thrown or swung. They moved quietly, carefully, following the boy's lead. Each step was a defiance of the fear that had ruled their lives for so long. Daniel's voice came over the coms again, strong despite the chaos. "I'm holding them back. You have a chance. Fight. Survive. Live." The boy nodded, tears stinging his eyes. He felt a surge of strength he had not known he possessed. He raised his weapon and stepped forward. Others followed him, and then others still, forming a small line of resistance among the ruins. The first raider ship descended, its weapons firing blindly into the streets. Sparks flew, metal screamed. But the people were ready. They dodged, they aimed, they fought. They were untrained, fragile, and scared, but they were alive, and that was enough. Each shot, each movement, carried the courage Daniel had given them. The boy could see Daniel's ship now, damaged but unstoppable. He maneuvered through the largest raider vessel, striking at its weak points. The explosion that followed lit the night sky like a second sun. People gasped, cheered, and felt their hearts lift. One by one, they began to believe that maybe they could win. The raiders were powerful, but the humans' determination and the people's newfound courage worked together like fire and wind. They struck where the raiders least expected, hitting weak spots, defending families, and saving one another. The ruins, once a symbol of hopelessness, became a battlefield of bravery. Every time the boy looked at Daniel, he felt something swell inside him: admiration, gratitude, awe, and something more profound, faith. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. And the human had shown them all what it meant to be truly brave. Daniel's voice came one last time, weary but fierce. "If I fall, remember this. You are stronger than you think. You can survive. You can rise." The boy's heart broke at the thought. Daniel had risked everything, his life, his ship, for strangers he barely knew. But the human's words were not despair, they were a gift. They were the flame that would continue to burn long after the battle. The raiders faltered, confused by the unexpected resistance. The people fought with courage, striking back with what little they had. And Daniel, though wounded and battered, pressed on, each move precise, each strike calculated. Slowly, the tide began to turn. In the darkest night, among explosions, smoke, and fear, a truth became clear. Even the smallest, most fragile being could ignite hope. Even when the odds were impossible, courage could carry the day. And even when the world seemed lost, the fire of one human's determination could inspire a people to rise again. The boy, standing among his people, looked at Daniel's ship as It moved through the chaos, battered, but alive. For the first time, he understood that hope was not a dream, it was a choice, a light that anyone could carry. And tonight, they were all carrying it together. The battle raged through the night, but something had changed. The people of the ruins were no longer just hiding behind walls or trembling in fear. They were moving with purpose, eyes wide with determination, hands steady despite their trembling hearts. Daniel's courage had done more than fight the raiders. He had awakened something, long buried inside them. The boy ran along the broken streets, rallying his people. "We can fight," he shouted. "We can survive. Follow me." His voice rang against the ruins, carried over the echoes of explosions. At first, only a few stepped forward, hesitant and unsure. But the spark had been lit. Soon, dozens followed, moving with a quiet ferocity that caught even the raiders off guard. Daniel's ship weaved through the chaos above, dodging blasts and striking fear into the raider fleet. He could see the boy leading the people below, their movements coordinated, their attacks more confident than ever. A faint smile touched Daniel's lips. This was not just survival, it was rebellion, bravery, life. The raiders had expected to find broken, terrified beings. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they were met with resistance. Makeshift barricades were erected from rubble and old machinery. The people threw whatever they could, rocks, tools, even scraps of metal. They shouted, they ran, they fought, and their courage spread like wildfire. The boy noticed an old, rusted generator in the center of the ruins. With Daniel's earlier lessons in mind, he rallied a small group to repair it. Sparks flew as they worked, hands trembling with fear and hope alike. And then, with a loud hum, the generator roared to life. Lights flickered across the ruins, illuminating the people's determined faces. For the first time in decades, the darkness was not complete. Daniel's voice came over the comms, tired but steady. "Keep moving. Fight. This is your world now." Hearing those words, the boy's courage surged. He charged forward alongside his people, leading them toward the raiders with a newfound sense of strength. Every step felt heavier than ever, yet lighter at the same time, heavy with responsibility, light with the power of choice. Fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. Courage was stronger. The raiders faltered, confused by the unexpected coordination of their supposed victims. The people struck in unison, each small act of defiance hitting with greater force than expected. Even children helped, carrying water and supplies, guiding the wounded to safety. Proving that bravery could take many forms, Daniel's ship swooped low, targeting the largest raider vessel. The boy watched as the human maneuvered with precision, striking at a critical weak point. The raider's ship exploded in a shower of sparks and fire. The people below erupted with cheers, their voices echoing against the ruins, a chorus of triumph and belief. The boy felt tears streaming down his face. For the first time, he realized something powerful. Courage could not only protect, it could inspire. Daniel had given them more than help. He had given them belief. He had shown them that they were not helpless, that their actions mattered, that life, even in darkness, could be fought for. Slowly, the tide of the battle turned. The raiders began to retreat, disorganized and shaken by the unexpected resistance. The people of the ruins pressed forward, reclaiming their streets, their homes, their lives. Daniel's ship, battered but still flying, provided cover, striking at anyone who dared pursue them. When the last raider vessel disappeared into the distance, silence returned to the ruins, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of triumph, of breathing after running, of hearts still pounding but filled with pride and hope. The boy looked around at his people. Faces that had once been hollow now glowed with life. Eyes that had trembled now shone with determination. And in the distance, Daniel's ship hovered, wings damaged, engines smoking, but alive. The boy ran toward him, yelling above the quiet hum of the aftermath. "You did it. We did it. You showed us we could." Daniel's eyes softened as he looked down at the boy. "No," he said quietly. "You did it. You all did it. I just reminded you of what you were capable of." In that moment, the boy understood fully. Daniel had not just fought the raiders, he had fought despair itself. He had reminded them that courage was not just for the strong or the trained, but for anyone willing to act, willing to stand, willing to believe. The ruins, once a place of shadows and fear, now hummed with life. And in the boy's chest, a fire burned stronger than ever. A fire of hope, courage, and the knowledge that even the smallest spark could ignite a world, and it was all because of a human who had walked into the darkest place imaginable, carrying nothing but belief, bravery, and the unshakable will to inspire. The sky above the ruins was finally quiet. The raiders had fled, their ships nothing more than distant shadows. Silence returned, but it was no longer the heavy, suffocating silence the boy had known for years. It was different, now full of life, trembling with relief, and carrying the hum of possibility. The boy ran through the streets, calling to his people. Faces that had once been hollow and fearful now shone with exhaustion, pride, and disbelief. Children hugged parents who had survived, families reunited, and neighbors helped each other clear debris and tend to the wounded. Every step he took was a step into a future he had thought impossible. He finally reached Daniel's ship. Smoke rose from the damaged engines, and scorch marks traced the hull like scars from a long battle. But Daniel himself stood tall, leaning against the ship, breathing heavily, but alive. His eyes, tired and worn, softened as he looked at the boy. "You did it?" the boy said, tears streaming down his face. "We did it, all of us, because of you." Daniel shook his head slowly, a faint smile appearing despite his exhaustion. "No," he said quietly. "I didn't do this. You all did it. I only reminded you of something you had forgotten. That courage is stronger than fear. That hope is stronger than despair. That even in the darkest times, you can rise." The boy looked around at his people, their faces glowing in the flickering light of repaired generators and small fires. For the first time in decades, the ruins felt alive. The streets hummed with voices, laughter, and cries of relief. The broken towers, the shattered walls, they were no longer symbols of defeat. They were monuments to survival, to courage, to life itself. He remembered the first time he had seen Daniel, stepping out of a small, battered ship, offering help in a world that had long forgotten the meaning of the word. At the time, he had thought it strange, almost impossible. Why would anyone risk themselves for strangers? Now, he understood. Daniel had risked everything not for glory, not for reward, but for belief. Belief in the people, belief in life, belief in hope. Slowly, people began to gather around the human, offering what little they had: water, food, even repaired tools. They did not know how to thank him enough. Words felt small compared to what he had done. But their gratitude was deep, genuine, and overflowing. The boy stepped closer, his chest swelling with emotions he could not fully name. "You came here when no one else would. You gave us hope when we thought it was gone. You reminded us that we are not alone, that we can be more than what the world says we are." Daniel's voice was quiet, almost humble. "Humans don't give up. We see strength where others see weakness. We fight when the world tells us to hide, and sometimes we find it in others too." The boy realized then that courage was contagious. Daniel had not only saved them from the raiders, he had saved their hearts, their minds, and their future. Every person who had once cowered in fear now stood taller, walked stronger, and looked to the stars not as distant lights, but as possibilities. For the first time, the boy allowed himself to imagine a world beyond the ruins. A world where fear did not control life, where hope could grow like fire in the darkness, where courage could be found in the smallest of beings. Daniel had not just fought a battle in the sky, he had fought despair itself, and they had all survived because he believed they could. The stars above twinkled brightly, no longer cold and distant. They reflected in the eyes of the boy, in the faces of his people, in the smile of a human who had changed their lives forever. And in that light, he saw a future worth fighting for. He turned to Daniel, gratitude and awe overflowing. I don't think we'll ever forget you. You showed us what it means to be brave, to hope, to rise. I hope someday we can be like you. Daniel nodded slowly, exhaustion in every movement, but pride in every breath. You already are, he said, softly. You always were. You just needed a reminder. The boy looked around at his people, at the ruins that now felt alive, and for the first time, he smiled without fear. The darkness had not won. The fire of hope, lit by one human, had spread to every heart willing to see it. And in that quiet, glowing moment, the boy knew something unshakable. No matter how dark the universe seemed, light could always be found. Courage could always rise. Hope could always return. Because of Daniel, a human who walked into their lives when everything seemed lost, they had learned what it truly meant to survive, to fight, to live. And they would never forget.